The desert night held its breath beneath a ceiling of stars, the silence pierced by the sudden crack of a gunshot that echoed across the valley. John Carter stepped into the open clearing with dust rising at his boots. And a whiskey bottle slipped from his hand, shattering against the rocks, amber liquid spilling like wasted hope. Carter muttered, "No peace under these skies," his voice trembling with anger and regret. From the shadows, Marshal Briggs emerged with a rifle, poised, his eyes cold and unyielding. His badge glimmered faintly in the moonlight. Briggs said, "You can't outrun the law, Carter." Carter's hand hovered near his holster, the starlight glinting off polished steel, and the night held its breath once more, waiting for the first move. The desert silence was broken again by Carter's ragged breath as he stepped back from the shattered glass. He remembered nights when whiskey dulled his grief, but tonight it mocked him, reminding him of every failure. Carter whispered, "Not tonight," gripping his revolver tighter. Coyotes howled in the distance, their cries layering dread upon the standoff. Briggs' voice cut through the night like iron. "You've run far enough, Carter. The dead don't forgive." Memories flooded Carter's mind, shallow graves, debts unpaid, and betrayal seared into his soul. The torment in his eyes revealed a man cornered not only by law, but by his own past. The stars bore silent witness as Briggs advanced closer, boots grinding gravel beneath him. His rifle steadied as his voice rang with finality. "This ends tonight." Carter's heart thundered, but his eyes narrowed with defiance. He remembered Samuel Kane, the old mentor who once urged patience, but tonight caution felt like weakness. Carter said, "A man can only run so far before he turns to fight." The narrator spoke of how both men mirrored each other, one draped in law, the other cloaked in sin, bound by history written in blood and betrayal. The desert seemed to close in, urging resolution. Tension clung to the air like smoke as Carter's thumb brushed the revolver's hammer. The steel felt cold, unyielding, a reminder of choices that carved his fate. Briggs steadied his grip, weathered face etched with contempt. "You should have died with the others," Briggs said. The words seared Carter's chest deeper than any bullet. His mind flashed with betrayal, and the ambush that left allies in shallow graves, Briggs absent in that hour of need. Carter muttered, "Maybe I should have, but I didn't." The desert leaned in, listening as the ghosts of their past circled the clearing. The desert grew heavier, its silence pressing like a coffin lid. Carter's pulse hammered as his fingers trembled near the revolver. Briggs shifted, his boots grinding gravel, decades of law weighing each move. "This valley will bury you, Briggs," declared coldly. Carter smirked bitterly, his words sharp as broken glass. "Or maybe it'll bury us both." The stars flared brighter, burning with anticipation. Coyotes wailed again, their cries an omen. Time stretched thin, each breath a countdown. The narrator's voice carried the truth. Under whiskey and stars, only blood would decide the night. The clearing grew colder as silence stretched, yet Carter's heart burned hotter than the desert sun. He remembered his sister's voice, pleading for him to leave the gun behind. But fate had never granted him mercy. Briggs tightened his grip, eyes fixed with iron intent. The narrator revealed how Carter longed for redemption, though redemption seemed like a cruel dream beneath these stars. Carter said, "I'm not the man you think, Briggs. I've already been buried once." Briggs smirked, voice dripping venom. "You climbed out of that grave, Carter, but the dirt never left your hands." The space between them carried years of scars, the past written across their hardened faces. The coyotes' cries faded as the wind shifted, carrying whispers of the past. Carter's gaze drifted beyond Briggs to a memory of Samuel Kane, the old mentor who once guided him with steady wisdom. The narrator explained how Kane taught Carter that every man carries shadows, yet must choose whether to walk through them or let them swallow him whole. Carter clenched his jaw and whispered, "I never wanted this." Briggs narrowed his eyes, scoffing with disdain. "Then you should have stayed in the ground." The starlit sky bore witness to Carter's torment, a man shackled to regrets yet pulled forward by the faint ember of hope. The desert wind carried scents of sage and dust as Carter shifted his stance, memories colliding with the weight of the moment. The narrator described his soul as a battlefield where guilt and defiance warred endlessly. Briggs took a step forward, voice commanding, "Drop it, Carter, or I'll put you down where you stand." Carter's knuckles whitened around the revolver grip. He thought of the mentor who once told him redemption demanded sacrifice. His voice cracked with conviction. "I've given enough. Tonight, the ground takes what it's owed." Both men braced, locked, not just in a duel, but in the gravity of choices that stretched across years of betrayal. The narrator's voice deepened, carrying the weight of inevitability. Carter felt every scar etched into his body, reminders of lives lost and debts unpaid. Briggs' rifle never wavered, his face a mask of duty but his eyes betraying hunger for victory. "You don't deserve a second chance," Briggs said. Carter exhaled slowly, the revolver trembling in his grip, though his gaze never faltered. "Maybe I don't, but I'll take it anyway." The night seemed to shudder, stars burning brighter as though the heavens judged them both. What remained was not law or outlaw, but two men bound by choices carved in blood. The air turned heavy, pressing down on the clearing as though the desert itself sought to decide their fate. Carter's thoughts spiraled toward redemption, toward the faint memory of laughter long silenced by betrayal. Briggs raised his rifle higher, voice thunderous. "This is where it ends." Carter smirked, though sorrow weighed behind it. "Everything ends under the stars." The narrator lingered on the shared truth between them. Both men carried graves in their hearts, both condemned by the same merciless land. Tonight, whiskey was spilled, blood would follow, and the desert would remember neither man with kindness. The narrator spoke of the desert as a stage where past sins refused to stay buried. John Carter shifted his boots, eyes narrowing as anger gnawed at him. Marshal Briggs' voice carried across the clearing like a whip. "You've taken too much from this land, Carter." Carter spat into the dust, his words sharp as blades. "I took nothing that wasn't already stolen." The tension grew heavier as shadows stretched longer beneath the stars. Each man carried ghosts on his shoulders, each winged a reminder of broken trust. The night whispered that no matter who drew first, both would leave pieces of themselves in the dirt. The wind howled through the valley, carrying grit that stung their faces. Carter remembered nights when whiskey dulled the ache, but tonight clarity burned hotter than liquor. "You call it law," Carter growled, voice edged with fury, "but it's just chains forged by liars." Briggs' lips curled into a thin smile, his rifle steady. "Chains keep the wild from tearing the world apart." The narrator explained how both men stood as symbols, one scarred by lawless freedom, the other corrupted by rigid control. The desert seemed to hold its breath, waiting to crown its victor with silence or blood. The narrator revealed the weight of betrayal, pressing hard upon Carter's heart. He remembered the ambush, remembered Briggs' absence when allies fell screaming into the dirt. "You left us there," Carter snarled, fury trembling in his voice. Briggs' gaze hardened, his reply cold. "I chose the winning side." The truth cut deeper than any bullet. Carter's grip tightened, rage sparking in his eyes as the past clawed its way forward. The desert around them was no longer still. It became a graveyard for oaths broken and trust shattered. Tonight, every secret was dragged into the open under merciless stars. The night carried echoes of the dead, their silence screaming louder than words. Carter's voice cracked with sorrow hidden behind rage. "They died because of you." Briggs sneered, voice soaked in pride. "They died because they followed a fool." The narrator said the desert bore witness to truths too cruel for daylight, truths that corroded whatever humanity remained between them. Carter's revolver trembled, not from fear but from the weight of every grave tied to his name. The stars glimmered coldly, indifferent to the clash of men who sought justice, vengeance, and redemption all at once. The narrator's voice deepened, heavy with foreboding. Each breath they drew felt stolen, each second stretched into eternity. Briggs' eyes gleamed with cold triumph as he stepped closer. "Your sins always catch up, Carter." Carter smirked bitterly, masking sorrow with defiance. Then let them catch me tonight. The stars above pulsed like watchful eyes, 1,000 silent witnesses to the rising storm. The desert ground seemed ready to split, to drink whatever blood would fall. Both men, bound by betrayal, locked in a standoff where no law nor mercy could intervene, braced for the strike that would shatter everything. The narrator spoke of how the desert revealed not only enemies, but ghosts dressed in flesh. From the shadows emerged Elena Marlowe, whose beauty carried the weight of sorrow. Carter's breath hitched as memory clawed through him. She had once been his salvation, then his ruin. Elena's voice trembled, yet carried steel. "You shouldn't be here, John." Briggs sneered, keeping his rifle steady. "So the snake shows her fangs." Carter whispered, "Elena, why now?" The night tightened, betrayal bleeding into the air. The narrator told of how trust fractured into splinters when hearts carried hidden knives. The narrator revealed how Elena's arrival bent the night into a crueler shape. Carter's eyes softened, though sorrow weighed heavy behind them. "You said you'd left this place behind," he muttered. Elena lowered her gaze, voice breaking. "Some debts never let you leave." Briggs laughed bitterly, rifle unwavering. "She belongs to truth, Carter, and truth is that you're finished." The desert wind swept between them like a blade, carrying the sting of words sharper than bullets. Betrayal was no longer hidden. It stood in the open, cloaked in moonlight. The past collided with the present, rewriting the standoff in fire. The clearing became a theater of shifting truths. Elena raised her chin, her eyes gleaming with tears she refused to let fall. "John, you don't understand. He holds everything against me." Briggs' smirk widened. "She's smarter than you, Carter. She chose survival." Carter's voice cracked like dry earth. "You chose him?" The narrator explained how betrayal carved deeper wounds than bullets, how love became poison in the hands of destiny. Elena whispered, "I chose to live." Carter's soul fractured further, rage and sorrow warring as the desert stood indifferent. The stars glared coldly, watching another heart shatter. The narrator carried the weight of Elena's voice as she stepped forward, desperation breaking her facade. "John, you don't know what he's done." Briggs barked, silence, his rifle twitching with fury. Carter's gaze darted between them, torn by love, rage, and the gravity of choice. The truth simmered in the clearing like fire about to ignite. Elena's whisper reached him. It wasn't betrayal. It was survival. Carter's lips parted with bitter sorrow. Survival looks a lot like treachery tonight. The stars above seemed to pulse, reflecting the fracture of loyalties below. Nothing was whole anymore. Only shards remained. The narrator's tone grew heavier, sealing the scene with dread. Carter's voice quivered but held defiance. "I'll hear the truth from her, Briggs, not you." Briggs' rifle steadied, eyes burning with authority. "The truth is she's mine to command." Elena shook her head, eyes flashing fire. "I belong to no one." The desert erupted with silence thicker than thunder. Carter's revolver lifted higher, his decision no longer just about vengeance or redemption, but about trust shattered beyond repair. Under the stars, every heartbeat roared like a drum. The triangle of law, outlaw, and betrayal stood, poised to collapse into chaos. The narrator's voice deepened, revealing that the night held secrets sharper than any blade. Elena's gaze burned as she finally spoke. "John, he isn't chasing you for justice. He's chasing you for blood he spilled." Carter's chest tightened, his revolver trembling. Briggs' face hardened, yet his silence betrayed the truth. Carter's voice cracked. "You were there. You pulled the trigger." The desert shivered, its silence roaring louder than thunder. Briggs said, "Law is written by the living, Carter, and the dead don't talk." Betrayal twisted into revelation, and the world shifted under the stars. Nothing was the same. The truth spilled like blood onto cracked earth. "When day..." Elena stepped closer, voice trembling but steady. "He killed your brother, John, and blamed you." Carter's breath faltered, grief crushing his chest. Briggs barked, "Enough." The boy was weak. Weak men rot. Carter staggered, the revolver heavy as stone in his hand. The narrator revealed how his guilt was never his own, how his exile was built on lies crafted by the very man pointing a rifle at him. Rage surged, raw and blinding. Carter said, "All these years, you made me the villain." The stars themselves seemed to recoil. The desert became a courtroom, the stars silent witnesses to justice warped and broken. Briggs' voice cracked with fury. "He stood in my way, so I made the world believe you pulled the trigger." Carter's eyes blazed, grief turning into uncontainable rage. Elena whispered, "Now you see why I couldn't leave." The narrator revealed how betrayal had chained Carter for years, yet tonight those chains broke with fire. Carter leveled his revolver, his voice low but fierce. "You took everything from me, Briggs. Tonight, I take it back." The desert exhaled, trembling beneath the weight of vengeance awakened. The narrator's voice carried sorrow and rage, interwoven. Carter's knuckles whitened as he steadied his revolver. Briggs sneered, venom dripping from each word. "You were always a shadow of me, Carter? Nothing more." Carter's face hardened, his grief transforming into unyielding fire. Elena stepped aside, no longer a barrier but a witness. The night hummed with finality, each heartbeat echoing like a drum of war. Carter's voice cut through the silence. No more lies, no more chains. The standoff was no longer outlaw against lawmen, but truth against corruption. The desert knew blood would fall before dawn. The revelation burned across the clearing, brighter than the stars themselves. Carter's voice trembled, yet carried the weight of finality. "You killed my brother, and you buried me with him. But tonight I rise." Briggs' eyes narrowed, a predator cornered. Elena whispered with sorrow, "It ends here, John. One way or another." The narrator spoke of how the past no longer lingered in shadows. It stood naked in the cold starlight. The desert waited, its silence sharpened to a blade. Tonight was no longer about survival. It was about reckoning, and every heartbeat carved destiny into the dirt. The narrator's voice rose with the gravity of final reckoning. The desert clearing throbbed with silence as Carter and Briggs faced each other, revolver against rifle. Elena's breath caught, her eyes darting between men whose lives had become chains bound by blood. Carter's voice thundered with rage and grief. "You killed him? You ruined me. Now it ends." Briggs sneered, eyes flashing like steel. "You'll join him in the dirt, Carter." The stars above seemed to flicker, as though heaven itself leaned forward to watch. The ground felt alive, ready to swallow whichever man fate abandoned first. The night shattered with motion. Briggs fired first, muzzle flash tearing through the dark. Carter dove, dust exploding as the bullet struck stone. Elena screamed, her voice piercing the silence like glass breaking. Carter rolled, revolver snapping upward, his shot sparking against Briggs's rifle barrel. The narrator described how time bent, each breath stretched like eternity, each heartbeat a thunderclap. The clearing erupted into chaos, no longer a standoff but a storm of fire and fury. The desert wind carried the smell of gunpowder, smoke curling like spirits rising from the earth. The narrator's voice cut like thunder as the duel roared. Briggs stepped forward, rifle reloaded with deadly calm, eyes locked on Carter. "You can't outrun the truth," he snarled. Carter's revolver barked again, sparks flashing off steel as bullets kissed stone inches from Briggs' chest. Elena's sobs tore through the storm as she shouted, "Stop this, both of you!" But neither man heard. Carter's voice cracked with fury. "This isn't about truth, Briggs. It's about lies you buried in blood." The desert glowed with fire and shadow, destiny forged in every shot. The fight raged hotter than the desert sun at noon, though night still cloaked the land. Briggs' bullet grazed Carter's arm, blood staining his sleeve. Carter gritted his teeth, staggering but unbroken. Elena darted forward, hands raised. "Enough! He killed your brother, John, but don't let him kill you too. Briggs roared. She's lying. She's always lied. Carter's voice rose, raw and unyielding. Not tonight. The narrator revealed that every wound Carter bore, every scar, led to this moment. Blood, pain, and truth demanded one final answer. The desert froze in its own silence, the world holding breath for the final strike. Carter's revolver leveled steady, despite blood trickling down his arm. Briggs sneered, voice jagged. You'll never be more than a killer. Carter whispered, grief etched in every syllable. Then let this killing end the curse. The narrator described how stars above seemed to flare brighter as destiny coiled like a rattlesnake ready to strike. One breath, one pull, and the valley would echo forever. Tonight, law and outlaw, betrayal and truth, all balanced on the edge of a single trigger. The narrator spoke of silence after fire, the stillness heavy as a coffin lid. Smoke curled faintly above the clearing, gunpowder biting the air. Carter stood bloodied, revolver locked on Briggs. Elena whispered through trembling lips, "John, end it." Briggs staggered, fury flickering, even as blood seeped down his side. His voice rasped. "You'll never wash the dirt off your hands." Carter's eyes burned with pain and sorrow. "Maybe not. But tonight I bury the truth, not the lies." The desert listened as two broken men faced the edge of destiny. The wind sighed like a mourner, brushing dust over the battlefield. Carter's arm trembled, but his revolver never wavered. Briggs coughed blood, voice jagged with spite. "Pull the trigger, prove me right." Elena's eyes filled with tears, her voice a plea. "Don't become him, John." The narrator spoke of how redemption often comes at the barrel of restraint. Carter's breath slowed, his gaze torn between vengeance and peace. The stars above burned with cruel brilliance, as though mocking the choice that split his soul. Every second carried the weight of eternity. The narrator revealed how Carter's heart pounded against the cage of his chest. The gun felt heavier than iron, carrying years of rage. Briggs laughed weakly, spitting blood into the dust. "You're nothing without me." Carter's voice cut low and steady. "I was nothing because of you." Elena stepped closer, placing a trembling hand on Carter's shoulder. "Choose life, John. Choose more than this." The night swelled with pressure, a breaking point where love and vengeance clashed. The desert seemed to lean forward, waiting for the hammer's fall. The clearing trembled with choice. Carter's finger brushed the trigger, Briggs' sneer daring him forward. Elena's whisper broke like glass. "Redemption is not killing him, John. It's walking away." The narrator said that in that moment Carter saw his brother's face in the stars, not begging for vengeance but for peace. With a shuddering breath, Carter lowered the revolver. Briggs' smirk faltered, disbelief cutting deeper than the wound in his side. Carter said, "You'll die by your own sins, not by my hand." The desert exhaled, heavy yet freeing. The narrator spoke of how endings rarely come with triumph, but with scars that echo forever. Carter turned from Briggs, his bloodied frame silhouetted by moonlight. Elena followed, her eyes wet with relief and sorrow. Behind them, Briggs slumped to his knees, coughing blood into the dirt. The desert held him with indifference, swallowing his cries into the night. Carter whispered, "It's over." The stars shimmered, eternal and uncaring, as the outlaw walked into the horizon, not redeemed, not damned, but free from the chains of lies. The desert would remember whiskey spilled and blood withheld.